I think I've mentioned in previous videos I'm moving house. And you know, when you're packing up and you find something you completely forgot about, well, that just happened to me. I opened a bag and I found these Christmas fabric panels I bought ages ago to make table mats. Now, most of my sewing things are already packed away, but I thought this is the perfect little project I can finish before the move. Just in time for Christmas, I'll make my table mats. These are just super pretty little pictures. There's actually 6 of them, and I think they're all different because they're very creased up because I've obviously put them in a bag and just totally forgotten about them. And they all look like American barns. Aren't they cute? I really like those. Let's measure and see what the panel size is. And I obviously thought that they weren't going to be big enough because I have some jelly roll leftover bits that I've put in the bag ready to use with them. I can't even remember doing this, but I obviously had it planned out what I was going to do. So let's see. I just love these panels. They're so pretty. They'll make great little table mats for me for Christmas. All right, so the brown frame is what I'm measuring, and they're not quite 11 inches. I'm going to cut 1/4 inch around each size and make this frame my actual size. Now, I would cut a little bit bigger, but, well, let's just check. Sometimes they don't quite give you that much fabric in between. 1/4 inch, that's all the fabric I've got. So I can't make them any bigger than that. So the first thing I need to do is give all this an iron because it really is too creased up to use like this. And then one thing that you have to watch out for with panels is that sometimes the print on them is just not quite square. And so you can do one of two things. You can get a pin the corners, make sure they're pulled square, and then do a steam iron on them to help keep them in the right shape. Sometimes they're square enough to use, and as you sew, you can just pull them into the shape that you want. So I'm going to iron these, and then I'm going to see just how square they are and if I need to do anything drastic with them. I think these actually look pretty square on here, but it's not often easy to tell. And then all these extra colours, I'm just going to just make some little squares or something to make the extra part, to make them a little bit bigger size. I also have a large piece of this, which I must have intended to use for the back. And of course it doesn't match the front at all, but that's really fine. If I wanted to, I could just turn them over and have the plain Blue Angel ones showing as the table mat on the other side, so they'll be kind of reversible. So I'm going to go and iron these and have a look and see how square they are. I really want these to be 12.5 inches in this direction. That's because 11.5 is a very difficult amount to figure out what size to make the squares. 12, everything divides into. So I can make 2.5 inch squares down the side if I make these 12.5 inches. I'm going to first of all cut this strip off down the side because I'm going to try and make this beige, see if I've got enough of this beige to add 1 inch to the bottom of each of these squares. So I'm cutting this off first to make sure I have the length. Now I've already decided that I want to cut 1/4 inch down each side of these. That's the size that I'm going to do for the seam. And I'm using my ruler, and I'm cutting this by measuring along the edge of the frame. These squares are slightly off. If I use the printed pattern as my guide for the ruler, these will pull into shape as I sew them. So I'm going to lay my ruler on the 1/4 inch there. Smooth that a little bit away like that. Fabric is a little bit forgiving for things like this. As soon as I've got this one here, I'm just going to do the 1/4 inch at the other side. And here is my piece that I'm going to try and get the other 1 inch strips out of. Not sure if this is going to work. Let's see. Now I just need to divide these in two. This one's almost 1/4 inch already. I'm going to cut all 6 the same as that. Do you see that traditional quilt block on the front of that barn? Now this beige actually isn't going to show at all really when it's sewn together. So if I can't use the fabric that I've cut off, I can just use some of the jelly roll, the red jelly roll that I've got. Either will actually look okay. And I'm going to add the squares just on one side of the table mat, I think. So it's this direction where I need to make it 12.5. So my extra strip will go along the bottom. And I'll put it along the bottom on each of these table mats. I'm going to go ahead and find my beige strip now and cut. I have to cut the width that I want plus 1/2 inch for seam allowance. I'll lose this 1/4 inch and I'll lose a 1/4 inch off the band. So you also have to have 1/2 inch wherever you put a seam. So let's see exactly how much I've got to cut here. It's actually 11.25 cut that. To make it up to 12.5, I need 1.25 inches plus my 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I need a strip that's 1 3/4 inches wide, 1 3/4. Question is, can I get enough out of these strips? Let's see. Oh, Daisy's come to see what I'm doing. Go on, Daisy. I always have a very helpful cat here. And then I need to cut this the same width as my mat. So I think that's going to work because, you know, I have the other strip as well that I cut. Well, when I cut it off the other piece, I'll have another of these beige pieces. That's obviously going to cover 2. So I just need to cut that to size and sew it along the bottom. I'll do that and then we'll move on to the next step. I have my panel and my extra strip here. I'm just going to pin it in place and sew. And it's a 1/4 inch seam. I'm just chain sewing all of these. My strips are all sewn on now and I've pressed them all open. That one's actually a covered bridge. I think I would like to put a strip down that side, a narrow strip. So I've taken out one of my jelly roll strips that I think will look nice and that I've got enough of to do them all. And I think I'm going to do a thin strip of that, probably just half the width of the jelly roll on that side. I think it'll look uneven if I don't do that. And then down this side, I'm going to do some 2.5 inch squares. Let's put that over there. So here I've laid out some jelly roll strips and I'm just going, they're already obviously 2.5 inches wide, and I'm just going to cut and make them into the squares, and then I'll be chain sewing them together. So I don't have an even amount of the colours, so they're just going to be variegated when I sew them all together. I just want to set off with an even edge here. Let's just trim all these down. I've got a pile here, I think there's 4 strips here. And I'm just going to go along. This is a 3-inch ruler. I'm just going to go along like this, cut all these strips. When I've got as many as I want, I'll just lay them into strips and just chain sew them. I need 6 per row going down. This is the reason I made this 12.5 inches, because that's the easiest way to work it out. When these 6 are sewn together, they'll be 12.5 inches and they'll fit perfectly along this edge. I'm going to put the narrow strip this side, the 2 wide strips this side, and then I'll have a look at it and see if it looks about the size I want. I think it will be. I may have to do an extra 2.5 inch strip, but I think that will be okay. Sometimes I do better when I make something and then I just look at it and see if it looks like in the right dimensions for what I want. I'll go ahead and finish cutting these. I have my squares spread here on the floor. I wanted to separate them out. The strips won't be the same, but the colour balance will be fairly even in them. Jess. And Jess does not want me to do this and just generally interfering, aren't you? He's being bad tonight. So I'm not getting very much done because he's determined to mess things up. Anyway, as I can tonight, I'm going to go ahead and sew the rest of these together. I've sorted these out a little bit, so I've got 6 different ones in each strip and I'm just sewing them together. I'm doing sets of 6. And then I'm doing enough so that I've got 3 strips at the moment. I may only use 2. And once I've got these first 3 done, I'm going to put them on one of the pieces that I've made, one of the panels that I've made, and see which looks the best, the 2 or the 3. So that's one set of 6, another set of 6, and I'll just finish this one and then sew them together and we'll give it a try. So I'll take these to the ironing board, press the seams all in one direction, and then I'll turn it so that the seams all nest together. I find that the best way to put these strips together. So I'm just nesting all these seams together. And again on this I'm doing 1/4 inch seams throughout. I'm going to press that open. And then I'm going to pin it down the side of there. Can you see that? Let's sew that on there. Just brought it over here to show you, and I think it looks better with just the 2. that's what it would look like with the third one on there. But I rather think I like that one. So for the moment, I'm going to do it with the 2. So I'm just going to continue on now, and I'm going to sew the others exactly the same way, and then I'll put the strip on the other side. Got all my side pieces attached here to my panels. The last thing I'm going to do is this little strip that runs down this side. So for that, I just took one strip of the jelly roll that I was using. This, by the way, is a Robert Kaufman Christmas jelly roll that I used. I really like his fabric. I've had this one a while, so exactly the same one probably isn't available, but he has other really nice ones. So I used this strip simply because I knew it was a full strip. And all I did was cut it into 12.5-inch lengths because that's the size down here, the same as this side, obviously. And then the jelly roll itself, I just cut down the centre. And that makes 6 out of 1 strip, and that's enough for these. So very simply now, I'm just going to put that right sides together. Sew down there, and that'll be the last step on these fronts. So let's just go ahead and do that. Okay, so I'm just going to press these open. And that'll be all the top needs. Here are all the panels now, the way I'm going to have them looking when they're actually finished. Let me just give you a close-up, because what makes these panels are these great pictures inside each one, which I really like. And I've made these more Christmassy by the fabric I've added. But these could just be winter table mats, you know, depending on what you put around them. I'll probably just use them as winter anyway. Don't you think this would make a great Christmas quilt too? As you can see, this one's a covered bridge. They're all either covered bridges or barns. And I just really like that. And then this fabric here, this is what I'm going to put on the back. So I'm just going to cut that to size, and then it'll just need the batting and binding. I'm not going to show that on camera because I've actually packed my batting all away because, as I say, I'm moving house and I'm packing up to move, and my sewing room is half empty. Normally on a project this size, I would do a fold over kind of binding. So I would cut the back, which I've got the backing fabric laid here just as a demonstration, and I would make it 1 inch bigger all the way around. And then the way I would do it would be to fold in the edge and make mitered corners and sew it down there. On this project, that won't work very well because this fabric is such contrast that I don't think that'll look good along the edge. If you do want to see this method though, I made some other table mats and I'm showing you the picture here of the video, and you can look at that if you want to see the way I do that. On this particular project, I'm just going to do a regular binding. It's a little bit fiddly with it being small. I'll put a link to that video at the end of this one, so if you want to see how to do the regular quilt kind of binding, it's on there. If you do, you may already know how to do it. One tip I would say though, if you're doing that, is when you begin and end and join the binding that goes all the way around, I would do it in the middle because you've just got such a small space to work that it'll make it easier for you. I'll finish it. I will post a picture at a later date of them finished. But so that's my pretty Christmas table mats. Turned out really good. So simple and easy. Anybody can do this, and it's like a one-day job. I hope you enjoyed this. If you like it, hit the bell for more scrappy projects or any kind of quilting and Sashiko projects. And thanks for watching.